Meghan Markle just handed the internet her most cringe-worthy moment yet, and trust me, that's saying something. Over the weekend, the Duchess of Montecito posted what she clearly thought would be a charming, relatable glimpse into her life. Instead, she delivered a masterclass in fake authenticity that had commentators, TV hosts, and regular people alike tearing their hair out in frustration. The video in question? A so-called candid reaction to the Los Angeles Dodgers winning the World Series. But here's where things get interesting. This wasn't some spontaneous moment of joy captured by accident. Oh no, this was a carefully staged, meticulously planned piece of content that Meghan thought would make her look like just another California girl celebrating her hometown team. Spoiler alert, it backfired spectacularly. The footage shows Meghan literally shrieking at the top of her lungs, jumping up and down like she'd just won the lottery herself, while Prince Harry sits slumped in a chair looking about as enthusiastic as someone waiting for a root canal. The contrast is jarring, uncomfortable, and frankly painful to watch. But what really set the internet ablaze wasn't just the performance itself. It was the sheer calculated nature of it all. Within hours, the video had gone viral for all the wrong reasons. Social media erupted with criticism, mockery, and genuine concern for Harry's mental state. Major media figures couldn't resist weighing in, and honestly, their takes were brutal. This wasn't just your average celebrity misstep. This was Meghan once again proving that she cannot help herself when it comes to manufacturing moments for public consumption. The timing couldn't have been worse either. While Meghan was posting her theatrical celebration, the United Kingdom was reeling from a horrific mass stabbing that left 10 people wounded. But did the Duchess, who still clings to her royal title, show any awareness or sensitivity? Not a chance. She was too busy making sure the world saw her fake joy over a baseball game she probably didn't even watch in real time. What makes this whole situation even more fascinating is the pattern it represents. This isn't an isolated incident of poor judgment. This is who Meghan Markle fundamentally is. A woman so desperate for attention, so hungry for relevance that she'll stage anything, exploit anything, and drag her increasingly miserable-looking husband along for the ride. The question everyone's asking now is simple. How much more can Harry take before he finally breaks? Because that video didn't just expose Meghan's thirst for attention. It exposed the sad reality of what Prince Harry's life has become. The backlash was swift, merciless, and came from some of the biggest names in media. Megyn Kelly, never one to mince words, delivered a takedown that cut straight to the bone. She pointed out something that many people were thinking but hadn't quite articulated yet. This is the same woman who made absolutely certain she was photographed at Uvalde after children were massacred. The same woman who filmed her bare feet casually propped up in the car as she drove past the tunnel where Princess Diana died. There is literally nothing, Kelly argued, that Meghan won't exploit for self-promotional reasons. And you know what? She's not wrong. The evidence speaks for itself. Meghan has built her entire post-royal existence on capitalizing on tragedy, controversy, and calculated photo opportunities disguised as authentic moments. She's a disaster tourist, as one commentator brilliantly put it. She shows up wherever there's attention to be grabbed, cameras to pose for, and headlines to chase. But Kelly wasn't the only one taking aim. Cat Turd, a major account with millions of followers, summed up what countless people were feeling in just 3 words: fake and cringe. Sometimes the simplest observations cut the deepest, and this was one of those moments. The video wasn't just inauthentic. It was embarrassingly, painfully obvious in its staging. Royal Grift took a different angle, pointing out something that made the whole spectacle even sadder. Game 7 of the World Series started at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, which would have been 5 p.m. in California. This was supposedly the biggest baseball moment of the year, and Harry was sitting there without any guy friends, without his son Archie beside him to share the experience. Instead, he had Meghan and her friend Kelly shrieking like banshees while he looked like he'd rather be literally anywhere else on the planet. Think about that for a second. Where were the children during this momentous sports event? Why wasn't Harry bonding with his son over the game? 8:45 p.m. wouldn't have been unreasonably late for Archie, but instead the adults were having their party, performing for the camera while the kids were presumably tucked away somewhere with the nanny. It's a pattern that keeps repeating itself with these two. The children are nowhere to be seen when there are photo opportunities to manufacture. Nancy Sidley nailed the absurdity perfectly. "Whenever my team wins," she wrote sarcastically, "I immediately stop celebrating so I can set up my phone and record my boyfriend's reaction, even if he couldn't care less, because that's totally normal behavior." The sarcasm was dripping, but the point landed hard. Normal people don't do this. Normal people don't stage their spontaneous moments. But Meghan Markle isn't interested in being normal. She's interested in being seen, no matter how fake it looks. Let's talk about the technical aspects of this disaster, because once people started analyzing the footage frame by frame, the whole charade fell apart even more spectacularly. The camera angle alone gave away the game. This wasn't someone quickly grabbing their phone to capture an exciting moment. This was a professionally positioned camera, perfectly framed to catch both Meghan and Harry in the shot, set up on what appeared to be a tripod or fixed mounting. The lighting was suspiciously perfect too. Not the harsh, unflattering overhead lights you'd expect in a casual screening room setup, but soft, flattering illumination that just happened to make Meghan look camera-ready. Because of course it did. Nothing about Meghan Markle is ever actually candid, even when she's desperately trying to sell it as such. Social media sleuths immediately went to work dissecting every detail. They pointed out that Meghan had clearly stopped everything she was doing to make sure the camera was positioned correctly before the big moment arrived. She wasn't caught up in the excitement of the game. She was caught up in making sure her reaction would be captured for maximum viral potential. The difference is enormous, and it showed in every painful second of that footage. Then there's Harry's complete lack of engagement. The man looked like a hostage in his own home, which honestly might not be far from the truth. While Meghan jumped and screamed with theatrical enthusiasm, Harry barely moved. His expression was blank, detached, utterly disconnected from what was supposedly happening around him. Some observers suggested he looked like they'd already filmed this scene 3 or 4 times to get it right, and by this take he simply couldn't muster the energy to pretend anymore. Royal News Network's Brittany made a brilliant observation that many people missed initially. Harry had been photographed just days earlier wearing a Los Angeles Dodgers hat at the actual game, so he was allegedly a Dodgers fan then. But rumor has it he'd also expressed support for the Toronto Blue Jays. So which was it? Was he lying about his team loyalty? Was the Dodgers hat just part of a publicity strategy? The inconsistency raised serious questions about how calculated every single public appearance really is. What makes this even more insulting is that Meghan genuinely seemed to believe people would buy it. She thought posting this overly produced, painfully fake reaction video would make her look relatable and authentic. Instead, it did the exact opposite. It highlighted just how far removed she is from normal human behavior. It showed that she cannot experience anything without immediately thinking about how to package it for public consumption. One commenter noted that the video could seriously be used for torture, and honestly, the ear-splitting shrieks alone might qualify. Meghan's voice reached decibels that should require a warning label. It wasn't joy, it was performance. And it was a performance that nobody asked for, and even fewer people believed. Prince Harry's face in that video tells a story that Meghan probably didn't intend to share, and it's a devastating one. Body language experts and casual observers alike noticed the same thing. This man looked utterly defeated, completely checked out, and profoundly unhappy. The contrast between Meghan's manic energy and Harry's stone-faced exhaustion was so stark that people genuinely started expressing concern for his mental well-being. Nancy Sidley captured what many were thinking when she added more seriously to her earlier sarcasm. "I don't think Harry is mentally there anymore." And when you watch the footage with that perspective, it becomes deeply unsettling. This isn't just a guy who's tired or having an off moment. This is someone who appears fundamentally broken, going through the motions of existence while his wife performs for an invisible audience. Think about the life Harry left behind. Whatever his issues with the royal family, he had purpose, structure, friends, a clear identity. He was Captain Wales. He was the fun prince. He had genuine camaraderie with his brother, relationships with extended family, meaningful military connections. Now, he's an unpaid extra in his wife's delusional fantasy world, as one commentator brutally but accurately described it. The video exposed something Meghan probably didn't want the world to see. It showed that behind the carefully curated Instagram posts, the strategic paparazzi walks, and the endless PR narratives about their happy California life, there's a marriage that looks increasingly hollow. Sources have whispered for months about tension between them, about Harry's isolation, about his growing realization that maybe he made some catastrophic mistakes. This video seemed to confirm every one of those rumors. What particularly tragic is that Harry had to know this footage would be posted. He wasn't ambushed by a random camera. He participated, however reluctantly, in yet another one of Meghan's content creation schemes. Some observers speculated that he must be furious about the footage going public, that surely he didn't realize his wife would share their home security camera footage as social media content. But here's the thing, he should know by now. After years of this behavior, he should absolutely know that nothing is off limits for Meghan when it comes to manufacturing relevance. The fact that Harry continues to allow this, continues to participate in these embarrassing spectacles, speaks to how much control he's lost over his own life. This is a man who once flew Apache helicopters in Afghanistan, who created the Invictus Games, who had the confidence and charisma to represent the crown on the world stage. Now he can't even watch a baseball game without it becoming fodder for his wife's desperate grab at attention. Insiders have been claiming for a while now that the Harry we see today bears little resemblance to the man he used to be. This video provided visual evidence of that transformation, and it wasn't pretty. It was sad, uncomfortable, and deeply concerning. One of the most glaring questions that emerged from this whole spectacle was simple but damning. Where were Archie and Lilibet? This was supposedly a major sporting event, the kind of cultural moment that families gather around televisions to experience together. Yet the Sussex children were mysteriously absent from their parents' watch party, and people noticed. Royal Grift made an excellent point that resonated with parents everywhere. This was Game 7 of the World Series, starting at 5 p.m. California time. The perfect opportunity for Harry to bond with his son over sports, to create an actual authentic memory, to do what fathers and sons have done for generations. Instead, Harry sat there with Meghan and her friend Kelly, participating in what looked more like a college dorm room party than a family moment. The excuse that the kids were already in bed doesn't hold water either. 8:45 p.m. is when the game concluded wouldn't have been unreasonably late for Archie, who's old enough to stay up for special occasions. But special occasions in the Markle household apparently don't include the children. They include cameras, performance, and content creation. This pattern of absent children has become increasingly noticeable and increasingly troubling. Every paparazzi stroll, every staged photograph, every carefully orchestrated public appearance features Harry and Meghan front and center, while their kids remain hidden away. When they do appear, it's in carefully controlled glimpses that reveal almost nothing. Some observers have started questioning whether the children are being protected, or whether they're simply not useful props for the particular narrative Meghan wants to push at any given moment. Critics pointed out that Meghan's friend Kelly at least had the decency to watch the game with her daughter. That's what normal people do. They include their children in these experiences. They create family memories. But for Harry and Meghan, it seems the kids get shuttled off to the nanny while the adults perform for Instagram. It's a parenting approach that raises serious questions about priorities and values. What makes this even more frustrating is the hypocrisy. These are the same people who sued newspapers over privacy concerns for their children, who lecture endlessly about protecting young people from media intrusion, who claim their decision to leave royal life was primarily about giving Archie and Lilibet normal childhoods. Yet they're perfectly comfortable staging elaborate content for public consumption while their children are nowhere to be seen. The optics are terrible. It reinforces the growing perception that everything Harry and Meghan do is calculated for maximum attention, and that includes deciding when their children are useful to the narrative and when they're not. A spontaneous baseball celebration apparently didn't fit the aesthetic Meghan was going for, so the kids were excluded. It's cold, it's calculated, and it's yet another example of how disconnected from normal family behavior these two have become. People are starting to wonder if those children are actually getting the childhood their parents claim to want for them, or if they're just living in a different kind of gilded cage. Let's address the elephant in the screening room. Meghan Markle is not, has never been, and will never be a baseball fan. This sudden passionate devotion to the Los Angeles Dodgers appeared out of thin air last week, and it fooled exactly nobody. Before this calculated publicity stunt, there was zero evidence of Meghan having any connection to baseball whatsoever. No old tweets celebrating games, no childhood photos in Dodgers gear, no mentions in interviews about growing up loving the sport. Yet suddenly she's shrieking at decibel levels that could shatter glass because the Dodgers won the World Series. The performance was so over the top, so ridiculously theatrical, that even people who'd never followed Meghan's antics could tell something was off. Real fans don't behave this way. Real fans are focused on the screen, caught up in the genuine emotion of the moment. They don't stop to make sure the camera angle is perfect before allowing themselves to react. Royal News Network's Brittany nailed it when she said Meghan really needs to figure out what her brand is, because it's definitely not shrieking at the top of her lungs over the Dodgers winning. The comment was cutting but accurate. Meghan has spent years flailing around trying to find some identity that sticks, some persona that resonates with the American public. Failed actress turned humanitarian princess turned podcast host turned jam seller, and now apparently desperate sports superfan? Nothing lands because none of it is genuine. Then there's Harry's completely contradictory behavior that exposes the whole charade even further. Just days before this video emerged, he was photographed at the actual Dodgers game wearing team merchandise. He was playing the part of the supportive local fan, doing his duty for whatever deal or arrangement got them those premium seats. But whispers suggested he'd also expressed support for the Toronto Blue Jays. So which team was he actually rooting for? Or was he simply wearing whatever hat his wife's team told him would generate the best optics? The inconsistency is staggering and reveals just how transactional every single public appearance has become. Harry doesn't get to have genuine preferences or authentic reactions anymore. He wears the right hat, sits in the right seat, and plasters on whatever expression Meghan deems appropriate for the content she's trying to create. It's actually quite sad when you think about it. This man has been reduced to a prop in his wife's endless quest for relevance. What this baseball debacle really represents is desperation. Meghan and Harry are scrambling to maintain some foothold in American culture. Some claim to being relatable California residents who care about the things normal Californians care about, but their execution is so clumsy, so obviously manufactured, that it achieves the opposite effect. Instead of seeming down to earth, they look like aliens trying to mimic human behavior they've studied but never actually experienced. The harder they try to appear authentic, the faker they become. If the staged reaction video wasn't insulting enough, the seating arrangement at the actual Dodgers game added another layer of outrage that had sports fans and royal watchers alike shaking their heads in disbelief. Meghan and Harry somehow secured seats directly behind home plate, some of the most coveted positions in the entire stadium. premium real estate that usually goes to actual sports legends, major donors, or people with deep connections to the organization. But here's where it gets truly offensive. Sitting directly behind them was Sandy Koufax, arguably the greatest Dodgers pitcher of all time, a 90-year-old legend who gave his career to that team, who earned his place in baseball history through decades of excellence and dedication, and he was positioned in a seat behind two people who probably couldn't name 5 players on the roster if their lives depended on it. The disrespect was staggering. Sports commentators couldn't contain their frustration when they noticed this arrangement. One host expressed what thousands were thinking. Shouldn't Sandy Koufax be sitting in front of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry? This just doesn't seem right that we've got 2 randoms sitting in front of one of the greatest Dodgers of all time to watch the Dodgers win the World Series. The assessment was blunt but completely fair. It wasn't just Koufax either. Magic Johnson, the Lakers legend and genuine Los Angeles sports icon, was also seated behind the Sussex spectacle. Magic Johnson, who's actually invested in LA sports culture, who's built relationships within these organizations over decades, who represents everything authentic about celebrity sports fandom. He was positioned behind 2 publicity-seeking opportunists who showed up for the photo opportunity. The question everyone wanted answered was simple. How much did they pay for those seats? Because you don't just stumble into that positioning by accident. Someone made calls, pulled strings, or wrote a very large check to ensure Harry and Meghan got maximum visibility. This wasn't about enjoying the game. This was about being seen at the game, about generating content, about manufacturing yet another moment of fake relatability. The optics were terrible on every level. It reinforced the perception that Harry and Meghan believe they're entitled to preferential treatment based solely on their titles and celebrity status, regardless of whether they've actually earned it. Real fans who'd supported the team for years, actual legends who built their reputations through genuine achievement, all took a back seat, literally, to the Montecito publicity machine. What made it even more galling was the couple's behavior at the game itself. They got booed when they appeared on the Jumbotron, a clear indication of how the crowd actually felt about their presence. Harry's face registered the rejection, that uncomfortable recognition that people weren't celebrating them, they were mocking them. But even that public humiliation didn't seem to penetrate the bubble of entitlement they live in. Those seats represented everything wrong with how Harry and Meghan operate. They want all the perks, all the attention, all the best positions, without putting in the work or showing genuine respect for the institutions they're exploiting. This Dodgers fiasco isn't happening in isolation. It's part of a much larger, much more disturbing pattern of behavior that's become Meghan Markle's signature move. She cannot let a single moment exist without exploiting it for publicity, without calculating how it can serve her narrative, without figuring out the angle that puts her front and center, and the evidence just keeps piling up. Take the Halloween paparazzi stroll that happened around the same time. Royal Thoughts posted about the desperately thirsty couple plastering their children all over the internet again, and the photos told an interesting story. This wasn't a candid capture by aggressive photographers. This was another carefully arranged situation where Meghan and Harry knew exactly where the cameras would be and performed accordingly. But here's what made it fascinating. Unlike their usual overly forced public displays of affection, this walk revealed something closer to reality. Harry appeared to be drinking while they walked around. Meghan looked visibly upset about something, and they were letting the kids run more than 20 feet ahead of them. Remember, these are the same people who claim they need 24/7 security because they're wildly unsafe. Yet their children were running far ahead without protection in sight. The inconsistency is remarkable. What that Halloween walk actually showed, according to observers, was a couple that's mostly unhappy behind the scenes. Their happiness is a facade that only appears when the cameras are rolling and they remember they're supposed to be performing. When they think the moment is less controlled, less staged, the cracks start showing. The tension becomes visible. The reality seeps through. Then there was the Instagram post deletion scandal that happened the very same weekend. Meghan had posted content showing herself looking incredibly happy, perfectly timed to go up right when major news about Prince Andrew was breaking. The timing was catastrophically bad, and she had to scramble to delete the post. But here's what that revealed. Meghan and Harry had absolutely no idea the Andrew situation was developing. They were completely caught off guard. According to sources, if they had better relations with Buckingham Palace, they might have received even an hour or two of warning. But right now they're so isolated, so cut off from the inner workings of the family, that they get blindsided by major royal news just like everyone else. It's a far cry from the influence and insider status they once enjoyed, and it shows in these repeated missteps. The whole situation reflects an organization that's very poorly run. It's a disaster behind the scenes. There's no clear identity, no cohesive strategy, no competent team managing the constant flow of content Meghan insists on producing. Things aren't moving forward. They're flailing around desperately hoping something eventually sticks. They didn't even have somebody monitoring the news closely enough to catch the Andrew story and pull the ill-timed post immediately. Every single one of these incidents points to the same conclusion. Meghan is running a sloppy operation fueled by desperation rather than strategy. Just when you thought the weekend couldn't get any more embarrassing for Meghan, she dropped her latest American Riviera Orchard content and somehow managed to sink even lower. The video in question features Meghan teaching her audience how to make a seasonal beverage, except what she's actually teaching is how to boil water and add a spice packet. Yes, you read that right. The Duchess of Montecito genuinely believed this qualified as lifestyle content worthy of her premium brand. The video itself is almost painful to watch. Meghan appears draped in virginal white, using that soft focus filter she's become obsessed with, clearly attempting to project an image of purity and domestic goddess expertise. But the facade crumbles the moment she starts explaining her revolutionary recipe. Boil water for 8 to 10 servings, add the entire contents of the mulling spice packet, let it steep, and congratulations, you've just made what Meghan considers a sophisticated holiday beverage. Critics immediately pounced on the absurdity. As one commentator brilliantly observed, she effectively just made mulled water, which is essentially air freshener in mugs. Real mulling spices are meant to be added to apple cider or wine, not plain boiling water. What Meghan created was basically the simmer pot that real estate agents put on stoves to make houses smell good during showings. You're not actually supposed to drink it. But Meghan wasn't finished with her groundbreaking tutorial. She then added honey from her collection, because of course she's selling honey too, messily dripping it into the mug with all the grace of someone who's never actually done this before. Then came a cinnamon stick for that special note, as she described it with the kind of reverence usually reserved for actual culinary achievements. The whole presentation screamed overproduced desperation. The choice to use such aggressive soft focus and professional lighting gave away the game entirely. This wasn't filmed in her actual kitchen, just like she didn't use her real kitchen for the Netflix show. Instead, there were probably 10 people working on this supposedly simple, authentic moment. A full film crew watching her boil water. The irony of trying to sell authenticity through the most inauthentic production methods possible seems completely lost on her. Social media had an absolute field day mocking the content. People pointed out that she's charging $16 for a single serving packet that you apparently have to use entirely to get any aroma out of it. Then you still need to add honey, cinnamon, and possibly alcohol just to make it remotely flavorful, which suggests the base product isn't actually that good to begin with. One observer noted that if you have to add all these extra ingredients to increase the flavor, maybe the mulling spices themselves are just not that flavorful. What this video really exposed was that Meghan fundamentally does not understand modern social media or authentic content creation. She's stuck using the same overproduced tactics from March 2024 when she launched American Riviera Orchard. She's going backwards and forwards simultaneously, completely lost about what her brand actually is or should be. So what does all of this actually mean for Harry and Meghan moving forward? Because these aren't just isolated embarrassments, they're symptoms of a much larger problem that's becoming impossible to ignore. The Sussex brand, such as it ever was, is crumbling in real time, and no amount of staged content or desperate publicity stunts can hide that reality anymore. The Dodgers debacle, the boiled water tutorial, the deleted Instagram posts, the paparazzi walks that reveal more tension than happiness. All of it points to a couple that's absolutely drowning in their attempts to maintain relevance in America. They left the royal family claiming they wanted privacy and normalcy, yet they're producing more manufactured content than ever before. They said they wanted to build meaningful careers in Hollywood, yet everything they touch either fails or gets mocked mercilessly. What's becoming increasingly clear is that Harry and Meghan have nothing without their royal titles. Strip away the Duke and Duchess labels and what's left? A failed actress who can't book legitimate work, and a former prince who's lost every ounce of the charisma and purpose that once defined him. Their entire existence is predicated on clinging to royal connection while simultaneously trashing the institution that gave them that connection in the first place. It's an unsustainable contradiction that's finally catching up with them. Industry insiders have been whispering for months that the couple's Hollywood strategy is dead in the water. Netflix isn't thrilled with their output. Spotify already cut ties. The podcast ventures fizzled. The Jam launch was a disaster. Now American Riviera Orchard is selling boiled water disguised as lifestyle content, and people are openly laughing. This isn't the trajectory of a power couple building an empire. This is the slow-motion collapse of two people who wildly overestimated their value outside the royal framework. The gap between their curated image and the reality is becoming a chasm. They want the world to see them as happy, successful, authentic Californians living their best lives. But what the world actually sees is desperation, fakery, and two people who seem fundamentally miserable playing roles they're increasingly bad at performing. Harry looks defeated. Meghan looks frantic. Nothing they produce feels genuine because none of it is genuine. Word on the street suggests that behind closed doors, panic is setting in. The titles they've clung to might not be safe forever, especially after watching how decisively the king moved against Andrew. If Charles can strip his own brother of royal status, what's stopping him from doing the same to his son? And if that happens, Harry and Meghan lose the only currency they have left. The brutal truth is that the Sussexes bet everything on being able to monetize their royal connection while escaping royal responsibility, and that bet is failing spectacularly. The American public isn't buying what they're selling. The British public certainly isn't, and no amount of shrieking over baseball games or tutorials about boiling water is going to change that fundamental reality. The question isn't whether their credibility is crumbling anymore. The question is how much longer they can keep pretending it isn't. So what happens when the performance finally ends? When the cameras stop rolling and the staged moments stop generating headlines? What's left of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle when nobody's watching anymore? Based on that Dodgers footage, the answer might be more tragic than anyone wants to admit. Drop your thoughts below, like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting, and you won't believe what's coming next.